The night was quiet, and the forest around the small village was darker than usual. The moonlight fell through the tall trees, making strange shadows on the ground. A man named Daniel, a simple Earthling farmer, walked back from his field with a basket of tools in his hand. He was tired after a long day, but something felt different tonight. The air was too still and the silence felt heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. As Daniel walked along the path, he heard a soft sound. It was not the usual sound of animals. It was weak, almost like a child crying. He stopped, holding his breath, trying to listen again. The sound came once more, faint and broken. Curiosity and worry pushed him forward. He left the path and stepped into the trees, his boots crunching softly against dry leaves. The sound grew louder the deeper he went. Finally, he stopped near an old fallen log. Behind it, something moved. His heart began to beat faster. At first, he thought it was a lost child from the village. But when the figure slowly lifted its head, he froze in shock. It was not a human child. The small figure had pale, silver-blue skin that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly with a golden light. Her hair was tangled in silver like threads of starlight. She looked weak, her body trembling as if she had not eaten for days. Torn cloth, not like anything from Earth, hung around her thin frame. Daniel's hand shook as he lowered the basket. He wanted to run back to call someone, but the fear in her eyes stopped him. She looked at him the way a starving animal might look at fire, scared but desperate for warmth. "Hey, are you all right?" Daniel asked softly, even though he knew she would not understand. The girl flinched, pressing herself against the log, trying to make herself smaller. She held something close to her chest, a small broken piece of metal shaped like a pendant. It looked old, and strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface. Daniel had never seen anything like it before. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Daniel slowly placed his basket on the ground and held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," he whispered, though he felt foolish talking to an alien child. The girl's breathing was uneven. She looked exhausted, as if she had been running for a long time. Daniel noticed cuts on her arms and dirt covering her legs. His heart softened. Whoever she was, whatever she was just a child, alone, weak, and afraid. Without thinking too much, Daniel took out a piece of bread from his bag. He broke it and placed it on the ground, sliding it a little closer to her. The girl's glowing eyes locked on the bread. Hunger won over fear. Slowly, with shaking hands, she reached out and snatched it. She sniffed it first, then took a small bite. For the first time, Daniel saw a hint of relief in her eyes. "See? It's safe," Daniel said gently, almost smiling. The girl ate quickly like she hadn't eaten in days. After finishing, she tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Daniel rushed forward instinctively and caught her before she fell. Her body was cold, unnaturally cold, like touching ice. She tried to push him away weakly, but didn't have the strength. "You're hurt," Daniel muttered, looking at her thin arms. He sighed, torn between fear and pity. He knew taking her home was dangerous. If the wrong people found out, there would be questions he couldn't answer. But leaving her here meant she might not survive the night. His conscience made the choice for him. He picked her up carefully, cradling her as if she was made of glass. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless, as if her body was fragile beyond belief. Her glowing eyes stayed open for a few seconds, staring at him, then slowly closed. Daniel walked quickly back toward his small cabin at the edge of the forest. The night air grew colder, and every sound made him nervous. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, even the distant bark of a dog. It all felt louder, sharper, as if someone or something was watching. When he finally reached his cabin, he pushed open the wooden door and laid her gently on the old sofa near the fireplace. The firelight reflected off her silver hair, making her look almost otherworldly, like a star fallen to earth. Daniel stared at her, still unable to believe what had just happened. "Who are you?" he whispered to himself. The girl stirred in her sleep, her lips moving as if she was whispering a word in a language Daniel couldn't understand. For a second, he thought he saw the faint glow of strange symbols appear on her skin, like hidden marks only visible in the firelight. Daniel shivered. He had no idea what kind of danger he had just brought into his home. But one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. The morning sun touched the edges of Daniel's small cabin, filling the room with pale light. He sat in the wooden chair near the fireplace, his eyes fixed on the strange girl who slept on his sofa. She had not moved much during the night except for turning her head now and then, whispering words in a language Daniel could not understand. When the first ray of sunlight reached her face, she stirred. Her golden eyes blinked open, and for a moment she looked lost, as if she did not know where she was. Then she saw Daniel watching her. Fear returned instantly. She sat up quickly, pulling the old blanket tightly around her thin body. Daniel raised both hands to calm her. "It's okay. You're safe. I won't hurt you," he said softly. She looked at him confused, her lips moving as if searching for words. Finally, she shook her head and lowered her gaze. Daniel sighed. Communication was not going to be easy. He stood and went to the small wooden table. From the basket, he brought a piece of bread and a cup of warm milk. He placed them on the table near her. The girl's eyes followed the food, but she didn't move. "Eat," Daniel encouraged, pushing the bread closer. Hesitantly, she reached out, snatched the bread, and took small bites. This time, Daniel noticed she chewed slower, as if she was no longer starving but still wary. While she ate, Daniel's eyes caught something strange. On her arm, where the blanket slipped down, faint marks glowed against her pale skin. They looked like curved symbols, soft golden light flowing across them. The marks pulsed, then slowly faded away as if they had never been there. Daniel froze. He had seen many strange things in his life, storms that broke the sky, machines brought by traders from far towns, but nothing like this. "What are you?" he whispered under his breath. The girl looked up suddenly as if she had heard him even though he spoke so low. She clutched the broken pendant on her chest tightly and shook her head. Her lips trembled, and for a moment Daniel thought she might cry. He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone." She studied him, her glowing eyes narrowing as if she was testing his truth. Slowly, she placed a hand over her chest and whispered something. The words were soft, musical, and foreign. Then she touched the pendant again. Daniel pointed at it. What is it?" She understood the question but stayed silent. Instead, she held the pendant close, almost like it was her life. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the air outside. It was distant but clear, the low hum of something unnatural. Daniel's heart jumped. He rushed to the window. Across the sky, a faint streak of light faded as if some craft had passed during the night and was only now leaving the atmosphere. When he turned back, he found the girl trembling, her small body pressed against the sofa corner. She whispered fast in her strange tongue, eyes wide in terror. "Hey, it's all right. Whatever it is, it's gone." Daniel tried to assure her, though he himself felt uneasy. The girl hugged the pendant tighter and finally managed a single word in broken human speech. "Danger." Daniel froze. His skin prickled at the sound. Her accent was heavy, the word clumsy, but it was clear. She understood more than he thought. "Danger? From who?" he asked, but she shook her head violently, as if she could not explain. For the rest of the morning, she stayed quiet, barely touching the milk he had given. Daniel worked around the cabin, but his thoughts never left her. Who was she running from? Why was she abandoned in the forest? And what were those glowing symbols on her skin? By afternoon, the girl walked unsteadily toward the small shelf near the fireplace. She traced her fingers over a wooden carving Daniel had made years ago. It was the figure of a bird, wings spread in flight. For the first time, her lips curved into a small smile. Daniel felt something stir in his chest. She was not just strange or alien, she was a child, lost and lonely. But his relief did not last long. When he stepped outside to chop wood, he noticed something in the dirt near the forest's edge. Boot prints. Large ones. They were fresh, pressed deep into the soft ground leading toward his land. Daniel's stomach tightened. No one from the village ever came this way. Whoever had walked there was not local. He hurried back inside, his axe still in hand. The girl looked at him with wide eyes, sensing his tension. "You're hiding from someone, aren't you?" Daniel asked, his voice serious now. She hugged herself, her glowing eyes filling with tears. Finally, in a trembling whisper, she spoke again in broken human tongue. "They hunt me." Daniel's heart pounded. He stared at her, realizing that whatever secret she carried, it was far bigger than anything he had imagined. And now, by helping her, he had stepped into that danger too. The next few days passed slowly in Daniel's cabin. Life that was once simple, feeding chickens, fixing fences, working the field, was now filled with constant worry. Every sound outside made him pause. Every knock of wind against the shutters felt like footsteps coming closer. But inside the cabin something unexpected was happening. The alien girl, though shy and fearful, was slowly changing. She no longer curled in the corner all day. Instead, she started watching Daniel closely, following his movements, learning silently. On the third morning, Daniel was chopping vegetables for stew when he felt eyes on his back. Turning, he saw the girl standing in the middle of the room, blanket draped around her shoulders. She looked curious, not scared. Her golden eyes studied his every move. "Hungry?" Daniel asked, lifting a carrot. She tilted her head. He held out a small piece. After a pause, she stepped forward and took it carefully. She chewed with slow bites, then gave a faint nod. Daniel chuckled. "See? Not bad, huh?" That was the first time he saw the shadow of a smile on her lips. Later that day, Daniel tried something new. He drew simple shapes on a piece of paper: circle, square, tree. He pointed and said the words aloud. Tree, circle, house. The girl watched silently, her head tilting with each word. After a while, she whispered softly, her voice uncertain. Tree." Daniel's eyes widened. "Yes, that's right, tree." Her cheeks flushed slightly. She tried again, firmer this time. "Tree." From that moment, she practiced more, repeating every word Daniel showed. Her accent was strange, the sounds heavy on her tongue, but she learned fast. Daniel realized she was far more intelligent than he had guessed. Each evening, they sat near the fire. Daniel taught her words, and she taught him strange sounds from her own language. Sometimes she would laugh softly when he mispronounced them, covering her mouth shyly as if embarrassed by her own laughter. Daniel could not help but laugh with her. For the first time since finding her, the fear in her eyes began to fade. One night, while Daniel carved wood into a new figure, the girl reached out and touched his old bird carving again. She whispered in her language, a soft musical phrase. Daniel looked up. "What does that mean?" he asked. She hesitated, then slowly formed human words. "Free sky." Daniel smiled warmly. "Yes, free sky. Birds fly." He mimicked wings with his hands. She giggled, a light, innocent sound. It was the first true laughter he had heard from her. But not everything was peaceful. At night, she often woke with sudden gasps, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She whispered names Daniel could not understand, clutching her pendant as tears streamed down her face. One time, Daniel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's just a dream. You're safe here." The girl looked at him, trembling. Then slowly she leaned against him. Her small body shook, but for the first time, she let someone hold her while she cried in that moment. Daniel realized he had begun to care for her deeply, not just as someone he rescued, but as someone who now felt like family. Days grew into a week. Daniel started calling her Star, because her silver hair always glowed like starlight in the fire. She never refused the name. In fact, one morning she pointed at herself and said softly, "Star?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, Star." The bond between them grew stronger. Star began helping in small ways, handing him tools, feeding chickens, even trying to sweep the floor with clumsy hands. Each time, Daniel encouraged her, proud of her effort. But one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Daniel gave her an old necklace, just a simple string with a carved wooden charm. He thought she might like it since she always held her broken pendant so dearly. Star accepted it with both hands, her eyes wide. She placed it around her neck, but the moment the wood touched her skin, her broken pendant reacted. The strange symbols on it glowed brightly, filling the cabin with golden light. Daniel jumped back in shock. Star gasped, clutching her chest. Her skin shimmered faintly with glowing marks, the same ones Daniel had seen before. Then, just as suddenly, the glow faded. Silence filled the room. Daniel's heart pounded. "What was that?" Star looked frightened. She shook her head quickly, whispering, "No." "No, tell." Daniel stepped closer. "Star, you're not just lost, are you? You're hiding something. Something important." Tears welled in her eyes. She whispered again in broken human words, "If they find me, you die." Daniel froze. Her voice trembled with truth. The room fell silent except for the crackle of fire. That night, as Daniel lay awake, he realized his life had completely changed. He had found an orphan girl unlike anything on Earth, and now she was part of his world. She was no longer a stranger. She was a child under his care, and he could not imagine sending her away. but her words echoed in his head. "If they find me, you die." Daniel knew he had already stepped into danger. Yet as he listened to her soft breathing and sleep, he also knew one thing clearly. No matter the risk, he would protect her. The evening was calm, but Daniel's heart was restless. He had just finished feeding the chickens and shutting the barn when he noticed the silence. Normally crickets sang in the fields and the forest whispered with night sounds. But now everything was still, unnaturally still. Inside the cabin, Star sat near the fire, tracing shapes in the dust with her finger. She looked peaceful, but Daniel's nerves were sharp. He had lived close to nature all his life. He knew when something was wrong. Tonight something was wrong. As he bolted the door, a faint noise carried through the trees, a low hum, steady and mechanical. Not like any cart or machine from the village. Daniel froze, listening hard. The sound grew clearer, then faded, as if moving across the sky. He rushed to the window and peered out. Over the distant treetops, dim red lights flickered before vanishing behind the hills. His stomach turned cold. Someone was here. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He kept watch by the fire while Star lay curled up on the sofa, her pendant clutched in her hands. Every creak of wood made him jump. Then, just before dawn, voices drifted through the forest. Low, commanding voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. Daniel's breath caught. He blew out the fire quickly, plunging the cabin into shadows. The voices grew louder. Boots crunched against leaves. He could hear at least 3. No, 4 people moving with purpose. A dog barked in the distance, then howled. Star sat up suddenly, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She pressed a finger to her lips, fear widening her gaze. Daniel nodded silently. He grabbed the old hunting rifle that hung above the door, though he knew it would be useless against whatever technology these strangers carried. Through a crack in the window, he saw them. 4 tall figures dressed in dark, metallic armor, their helmets glowing with strips of red light. Each carried weapons unlike anything Daniel had ever seen, long rods that pulsed with faint energy. One of them bent low, scanning the ground with a device that buzzed softly. Daniel's chest tightened. They were hunting, and they were close. "Spread out," one voice commanded, its accent sharp and unnatural. The soldiers began moving through the trees, scanning every patch of earth. Daniel's eyes darted to the boot prints near the edge of his land. He cursed silently. They must have followed those inside. Star trembled. She whispered something in her own tongue, clutching Daniel's sleeve. He shook his head quickly. "Stay quiet. Don't move." The soldiers moved closer, their boots heavy, their devices sweeping the ground. Suddenly one stopped and held up a scanner. "Trace detected," the voice said flatly. Daniel's heart thudded so hard he feared they would hear it. The soldier raised his weapon and pointed toward the cabin. Another one stepped forward, his visor glowing brighter. They were only meters away. Daniel had to think fast. He blew out a sharp breath and grabbed a lantern. In one quick motion, he opened the back window and tossed the lantern far into the trees. The glass shattered with a loud crash. Instantly, the soldiers spun toward the noise. Red beams of light cut across the forest as they scanned the source. "Movement! That way!" one shouted. Within seconds, 3 of them rushed toward the sound. Only one remained near the cabin, standing guard. Daniel pulled Star closer. His voice was a whisper. "We can't stay here. We need to move." She shook her head violently, fear in her glowing eyes. But Daniel tightened his grip. "If they find us, we're dead. Trust me." Slowly, he guided her toward the trapdoor beneath the rug. It led to a small cellar where he stored supplies. They slipped down quietly, Daniel lowering the wooden cover above them. Darkness swallowed them. Star's breathing was shaky, her small hand clutching Daniel's tightly. Above, heavy boots thudded on the cabin floor. The soldier had entered. They could hear the faint hum of his device scanning the room. Every step echoed like thunder in Daniel's ears. The soldier paused as if sensing something. Then the strange voice spoke again, low and menacing. "The signal is strong. She is near." Star whimpered softly, her pendant glowing faintly through the cracks of her blanket. Daniel quickly covered it with his hand, pressing it against her chest. He held her close, praying the light would fade. The soldiers' footsteps came closer, right above their heads now. For a moment, Daniel thought he would rip the rug away and expose them. But then a voice shouted from outside, "Nothing here. Tracks lead north." The soldier hesitated, then turned sharply. His boots thudded as he left the cabin. The door slammed shut. Daniel and Star stayed frozen in the cellar, not daring to breathe. Minutes crawled by like hours until finally silence returned. When Daniel lifted the trapdoor, the first rays of morning light entered the cabin. The soldiers were gone. At least for now. Star collapsed into his arms, her body shaking. She whispered in broken human words, "Close soon. They come back." Daniel brushed her silver hair back gently. His jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready," he said. But deep inside, fear gnawed at him. Whoever these soldiers were, they weren't giving up. And if they were looking for Star, it meant her secret was bigger than he could imagine. The next morning brought no peace. Daniel stood outside his cabin, staring at the forest edge. The memory of armored soldiers searching his land refused to leave his mind. He knew they would return. Soldiers like that didn't stop until they had what they wanted. Inside the cabin, Star sat quietly near the fire. Her pendant hung loosely in her small hands, glowing faintly. She looked weaker than before, as if hiding had drained the last of her strength. Yet when Daniel stepped in, she forced a smile. "You okay?" he asked softly. She shook her head slowly. Then, in broken human words, she whispered, "They find me soon," Daniel sighed. "Not if I can help it." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Staying in the cabin was no longer safe. They needed to move far from here before the soldiers returned. By afternoon, Daniel packed a small bag, dried bread, water, a blanket, and his old axe. He handed Star a warm coat that once belonged to his sister. It was too big for her, but she wrapped herself in it gratefully. "Where we go?" she asked carefully, her words shaky. "North," Daniel answered. "The forest runs deep and there are caves. Will be harder to find there." Star looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. They left at dusk. The sun sank low, painting the sky red as they slipped quietly into the forest. The world felt tense, as if holding its breath. Every crack of a branch made Daniel's hand tighten on his axe. Star stayed close, her glowing eyes alert, her small hand clutching his sleeve. For a while, the only sounds were their footsteps and the whisper of wind through the trees. Then it began. A sharp howl echoed across the forest. Not a wolf, not a dog. Something else. Star froze instantly, her face pale. "Hunters," she whispered. Daniel's blood ran cold. The howl came again, closer this time. Then another answered and another. Suddenly, red lights flickered in the distance, weaving between the trees. Soldiers. And they were not alone. Dark, four-legged creatures emerged from the shadows, beasts that looked part machine, part animal. Their eyes glowed crimson and metal plates covered their bodies. They sniffed the air, their jaws filled with sharp steel teeth. "Run!" Daniel shouted. They sprinted through the forest, branches whipping against their faces. The creatures barked with metallic growls, chasing fast. The soldiers' voices echoed behind them, commanding the beasts forward. Star struggled to keep up, her small legs stumbling over roots. Daniel grabbed her hand tightly, pulling her along. His lungs burned, but he didn't stop. The first beast leaped forward, its jaws snapping inches from Daniel's leg. He swung his axe wildly, striking the creature's head. Sparks flew and it tumbled to the ground with a screech. But more followed. "Faster," he urged, dragging Star forward. They reached a small clearing, but the soldiers were closing in. Energy beams cut through the trees, sizzling as they struck bark and soil. One beam missed Daniel by inches, burning the ground at his feet. He yanked Star behind a large rock, shielding her with his body. His heart thundered as he realized they were surrounded. Star clutched her pendant tightly, her eyes glowing brighter. She whispered something in her language, a soft chant filled with fear and desperation. "Star, what are you doing?" Daniel asked urgently. Before he could stop her, the pendant burst with golden light. The glow spread across her skin, the hidden symbols blazing like fire. A wave of energy exploded outward, knocking back the beasts. The soldiers staggered, their visors flashing as their scanners overloaded. Daniel shielded his eyes. The force of the light shook the ground, scattering leaves like a storm. When the glow faded, Star collapsed into his arms, exhausted. The beasts lay motionless, stunned, but the soldiers were already recovering. Daniel's breath came hard and fast. He looked down at the unconscious girl in his arms. "What are you?" he whispered, though the question was for himself more than her. Shouts rang out. The soldiers raised their weapons again. Daniel knew they had only seconds before being captured. or killed. With adrenaline surging, he hoisted Star onto his back and ran into the trees. His legs screamed with pain, but fear gave him strength. He weaved through the forest, ducking under branches, leaping over fallen logs. The soldiers' voices echoed behind him, growing fainter as distance grew. Hours passed before Daniel finally slowed. His chest burned, his throat dry. He stumbled into a hidden hollow near a stream and laid Star gently on the ground. She stirred weakly, her eyes half open. "Sorry," she whispered. "Power." "Not safe." Daniel brushed her hair back. "Don't you dare apologize. You saved us." Her small hand reached for his. "You protect me," she whispered, her voice faint. Daniel's heart tightened. Always. As she drifted back into sleep, Daniel sat beside her, listening to the distant sounds of soldiers searching the forest. He knew they hadn't given up. They would keep hunting until they found her. But Daniel also knew one more thing. He would not let them take her. Not while he was still alive. The forest was silent again, but Daniel's heart refused to calm. He sat near the stream, his axe resting across his knees, eyes fixed on the shadows between the trees. Star lay a few feet away, her chest rising and falling softly in sleep. The golden marks on her skin had faded now, leaving only faint traces like ash after fire. Daniel still couldn't forget what he had seen. The burst of light, the strange symbols, the power that knocked down armored soldiers and beasts alike. She was no ordinary orphan. When she finally stirred awake, the first thing she did was look at him. Her glowing eyes were heavy with guilt. She pulled her knees close to her chest, hiding her face in her arms. Daniel spoke gently, though his voice carried the weight of fear. "Star, you need to tell me the truth. Who are you? Why are they after you?" She shook her head quickly, as if afraid to speak. Daniel leaned closer, his voice firmer now. "You saved me last night. I saved you too. But if we don't know what's happening, we won't survive the next time. Please, trust me." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Finally, Star raised her head. Her golden eyes shimmered with tears. Not Orphan," she whispered in broken human words. Daniel's breath caught. She pressed a hand against her chest where the pendant rested. Princess." The word felt strange on her tongue, but Daniel understood immediately. His eyes widened. "Princess? Of what?" Her lips trembled. She pointed upward toward the sky. "My world. Farstar." Slowly she began to explain, using broken human speech mixed with gestures. Her family ruled a great alien empire, but enemies rose, traitors within her own court. A war broke out in the skies and her ship was attacked. Her protectors tried to save her, but in the chaos she was abandoned on Earth. Her pendant, she explained, was no toy. It was a symbol of her bloodline, an ancient key that connected her to her people. The glowing marks on her skin were royal seals, proof of her identity. "They hunt me," she said, her voice trembling. "If I live, they lose power." Daniel listened in stunned silence. The child he had thought was lost, weak and alone, was in truth the heir to an alien throne. He rubbed a hand across his face. "So those soldiers, they're not just looking for you. They're trying to kill you, to erase you." Star nodded slowly, tears running down her pale cheeks. For a moment, Daniel felt the weight of it crush him. He was just a farmer, a simple man who lived by the land. What business did he have protecting a princess from another world? Yet when he looked at her small, fragile figure, shaking with fear, his resolve hardened. "You're still just a child," he said softly. "You may be a princess up there, but here, you're just Star, and I promise to protect you. That hasn't changed." Her eyes widened, shining with both relief and disbelief. "You not afraid?" Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Of course I'm afraid. But leaving you alone? That's worse." Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Daniel sat with Star by the fire he had built near the stream. She told him more about her world, pointing at stars in the sky as if naming them. Daniel didn't understand all the words, but he could see the longing in her eyes, the pain of being torn away from her home. At one point, she whispered, "Family, gone." Her voice broke and she looked away quickly, hiding her tears. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." "Not while I'm here." She leaned against him, her small body trembling. For the first time, Daniel felt not just the duty of protecting her, but something deeper, like she had become part of his life in a way he could never undo. But peace didn't last long. As night fell, the forest stirred again. Distant hums echoed in the air, and flashes of red light glimmered far away. Daniel's jaw tightened. The soldiers had not given up. Star noticed too. She clutched her pendant and whispered, "They come again." Daniel looked at her glowing eyes, then at the axe in his hand. He knew they couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, the soldiers would corner them. He took a deep breath. "If they want to take you, they'll have to go through me first." Star's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to protest. But when she saw the fire in his gaze, she only nodded. For the first time, she seemed to believe in him, not just as a protector, but as someone who would stand against the galaxy itself if needed. And Daniel knew the truth now. He was no longer just helping an abandoned child. He was standing between an alien princess and her enemies, a farmer against an empire. That night, as the fire crackled and shadows danced around them, Daniel realized something else. Humanity might look weak to these aliens, but when it came to protecting family, even an adopted one, they had strength no empire could measure, and soon, he would prove it. The night was heavy with tension. Daniel sat by the fire, axe in hand, his eyes sharp as he listened to the forest. The faint hum had returned, louder now. Soldiers were near again. They had tracked Star across the hills, and this time Daniel knew they would not stop until they found her. Star sat close, her silver hair glowing faintly in the firelight. She held her pendant tight, her golden eyes filled with both fear and strength. She had confessed the truth. She was a princess of the stars. But here, in this dark forest, she looked no different from any frightened child. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." She shook her head firmly, her broken words soft but clear. "No, I fight too," Daniel almost argued, but when he saw the fire in her eyes, he nodded slowly. "Then we fight together." The forest broke with noise. Heavy boots thudded against the earth. Metal beasts growled as they pushed through trees. Red lights danced between branches surrounding the clearing. Daniel rose to his feet, gripping the axe with both hands. His heart pounded, but his eyes were steady. He was no soldier, no hero, just a farmer. But tonight he would stand like a wall. The first soldier stepped into the clearing, armor shining with red glow. His weapon hummed with deadly energy. More followed, spreading in a circle. Their leader raised a hand. "The royal child is here," he said in a cold, metallic voice. His visor glared like fire. "Hand her over, human, and you may live." Daniel tightened his grip on the axe. His voice was firm. "You'll have to kill me first." The leader tilted his head. "So be it." The beast leapt first, jaws snapping. Daniel swung his axe hard, striking one across the face. Sparks flew as it crashed to the ground. Another lunged, but he dodged and slammed the axe into its side. Pain shot up his arms, but he didn't stop. Star cried out and lifted her pendant. Golden light burst from her skin, forcing the beasts back. The soldiers staggered, shields flickering as they struggled against the sudden energy. One soldier aimed his weapon at Star. Daniel saw it and threw himself in front of her. The beam struck his shoulder, burning through cloth and flesh. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. "Daniel!" Star screamed, her voice breaking. He pushed her back gently. "Stay strong. Don't stop," the soldiers charged. Daniel fought like a man possessed. His axe flashed in the firelight, cutting through machines, knocking weapons aside. Every swing came from pure determination. Every breath filled with one thought: protect her. Star stood tall, her small body glowing brighter than ever. The symbols on her skin lit up fully now, her pendant blazing like a star. She raised both hands and a wave of golden energy surged outward. The ground shook. The soldiers stumbled, their weapons sparking. The leader shouted in rage, pushing against the light. "She cannot escape her fate." Daniel staggered but stepped forward, standing between Star and the enemy. His voice roared through the clearing. "She's not alone anymore. You'll never take her." For a moment, man and child, Earthling and princess, stood side by side, their strength joined. The golden light erupted, brighter than fire, stronger than steel. It tore through the clearing, hurling soldiers and beasts back into the trees. Armor shattered, weapons fizzled into sparks. The leader fell to his knees, visor cracking under the force. When the light finally faded, silence returned. Smoke drifted in the air. The forest smelled of burned metal. The soldiers lay scattered, defeated. The beasts were broken, their red eyes dim. The leader crawled forward weakly, his voice a hiss. This is not the end. Others will come. The galaxy will not forget her. Daniel stepped closer, axe raised. But Star shook her head. Her voice was soft yet firm. No more death. Daniel lowered his weapon slowly. The leader glared, then staggered into the trees, disappearing into the darkness. When it was over, Daniel dropped to his knees, exhausted. His shoulder burned with pain, his hands shaking. Star knelt beside him, pressing her glowing hands against his wound. Warmth spread through him, easing the agony. "You save me," she whispered. "I save you." Daniel looked at her and managed a weak smile. "Guess that makes us even." She smiled back, her golden eyes shimmering with gratitude. For the first time, she looked less like a frightened child and more like the princess she truly was. As dawn broke, light spilled across the forest. Daniel and Star stood together, staring at the rising sun. The night had tested them, but they had survived. Daniel knew the fight was not over. More enemies would come, more battles would follow. But deep inside, he also knew something else. He was no longer just a farmer. He was the protector of a princess, and Star was no longer alone. She had found family on Earth, one that would never abandon her again.